The phone rang on an ordinary afternoon, but the words that followed shattered her reality forever. The bank called, the voice said calmly, and they asked why your husband was standing at the counter with a woman who looks exactly like you. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. In that moment, suspicion turned into terror. What unfolded next was not just the revelation of betrayal. It was a carefully hidden truth surfacing at the worst possible time, exposing a man who believed his lies made him powerful and untouchable. Nia Kensington's life looked flawless from the outside. She was the kind of woman people whispered about in boardrooms, sharp, composed, untouchable. At 38, she had built a financial empire from the ground up, earned the respect of men twice her age, and lived in a glass house overlooking the city she ruled. Her marriage, too, appeared perfect. Marcus Kensington, charming and supportive, played the role of a proud husband effortlessly. That illusion shattered in the middle of her biggest deal yet. Nia was seated at the head of a long conference table, lawyers and investors hanging on her every word, when her phone vibrated. She almost ignored it until she saw the caller ID. Her private banker. He never called unless it was urgent. Excusing herself, she stepped into the hallway. 9 words. That's all it took. Your husband is here, with a woman who looks exactly like you. For a moment, the world tilted. The hum of the office faded, replaced by a dull ringing in her ears. She asked him to repeat it. He did, slowly this time, carefully, as if afraid she might break. Marcus wasn't just at the bank. He was attempting to authorize the transfer of assets tied directly to Nia's personal trust, accounts only she should have access to. And the woman beside him? She had Nia's face, her haircut, even her signature practiced well enough to fool junior staff. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't coincidence. As Nia stood there, heels planted on marble floors she owned, realization crept in like ice water. The late nights Marcus claimed were business dinners. His sudden interest in her financial structures. The subtle questions about passwords and beneficiaries. She had dismissed them all, trusting the man she shared her bed with. He wasn't stealing money. He was trying to erase her. The perfect life didn't crack. It split wide open. And in that fracture, Nia saw the truth with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. By the time Nia returned home that night, the penthouse no longer felt like a sanctuary. The lights were dim, the city glowing beyond the glass walls, but everything felt unfamiliar, like she had stepped into a life that no longer belonged to her. She didn't confront Marcus immediately. Instead, she sat alone in her study, heels kicked off, jacket draped over a chair, and listened. For the first time in her marriage, she listened without trust softening the edges. And in that silence, the truth began to assemble itself, piece by horrifying piece. The banker had sent her documents. Quietly, carefully, copies of authorization forms, signature cards, requests that required her presence. Only they weren't hers. The signature looked right at first glance, fluid, confident. But Nia had signed her name thousands of times. She knew the pressure points, the slight hesitation before the K. These signatures were rehearsed, practiced, trained, forged. Her chest tightened as she scrolled further. A temporary ID application, a duplicate access request, even a recorded video verification. Grainy, poorly lit, but convincing enough if you weren't looking too closely. The woman had her face. Not identical, but close enough. Same skin tone, same height, same hairline, same controlled smile. Close enough to fool strangers. Close enough to fool systems. Close enough to help a man steal a life that wasn't his. Nia closed her laptop slowly, her hand shaking. Weeks. That's how long this had been happening. Weeks of Marcus coming home late with tired smiles. Weeks of him kissing her forehead and asking about her day while memorizing her routines. Weeks of him holding her at night while planning how to replace her during the day. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. She walked into their bedroom and opened his closet. Everything was neatly arranged, just as it always had been. Marcus loved order, control. On the surface, it had always felt comforting. Now it felt sinister. She searched his drawers and found a second phone tucked beneath folded sweaters. It was unlocked. He hadn't expected her to look. Messages filled the screen. Short, efficient, cold. She's perfect, one read. Close enough, another asked. More than enough, Marcus replied. Once this is done, I'm free. Free. The word burned. There were payments, wire transfers to an account under a shell name. Timelines. Practice sessions. Notes about her mannerisms. How she stood. How she spoke. Even how she tilted her head when listening. He had studied her, not as a husband studies his wife, but as a thief studies a vault. Nia sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. The man she had defended in rooms full of skeptics. The man she had trusted with her fears, her past, her future. He hadn't just lied to her. He had been rehearsing her destruction. The woman wasn't the real betrayal. Marcus was. The woman was just a tool. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Asterisk running late. Don't wait up. Asterisk. She almost laughed. The sound caught in her throat and turned into something dangerously close to a sob. Instead, she wiped her eyes and stood up straighter. No tears. Not yet. She thought back to the early days of their marriage. How Marcus had seemed in awe of her strength. How he told her she made him feel safe. How he'd promised he'd never compete with her success. He hadn't competed. He'd planned to take it. Nia realized something then. Something colder, sharper. Marcus didn't think of her as a partner. He thought of her as an obstacle. And the scariest part wasn't the forged documents or the look-alike standing at a bank counter pretending to be her. The scariest part was this. Marcus believed he was smarter. He believed systems favored him. That love had made her soft. That her trust was weakness. That once the transfers cleared, once her identity was questioned, once the damage was done, she'd be too stunned, too embarrassed, too broken to fight back. He believed she'd lose quietly. Nia walked back in her study and opened a new file on her laptop. She didn't name it after Marcus. She didn't name it after betrayal. She named it reclamation. Every account, every asset, every legal safeguard she had built over years. She reviewed them with ruthless clarity. She called lawyers she trusted with her life. She made notes. She documented everything. By the time Marcus finally came home after midnight, Nia was calm. Too calm. She lay beside him as he slipped into bed, his familiar scent surrounding her. He wrapped an arm around her waist like nothing had changed. She didn't pull away. She didn't confront him. She stared into the darkness, heart steady now, resolve hardening with every breath. Because Marcus thought this was the endgame. He thought he was going to win. And he had no idea that the woman lying beside him, the woman he had spent weeks trying to erase, was already planning how to destroy the lie he was standing on. Quietly, completely, and without mercy. If Marcus had been paying closer attention, he would have noticed the shift. Nia didn't cry. She didn't accuse. She didn't spiral the way he had quietly counted on. Instead, she became calm, dangerously calm. The morning after she discovered everything, Nia moved through the penthouse like nothing had changed. She brewed coffee the way Marcus liked it. 2 sugars, no foam. She asked about his meetings. She listened, nodded, smiled at the right moments. When he kissed her goodbye, she kissed him back with practiced warmth. Marcus mistook her silence for ignorance. That was his first mistake. While he believed she was still blind, Nia was collecting sight. Every forged document, every digital footprint, every transaction attempt, she archived them with surgical precision. She requested internal audit logs from the bank under the guise of a security review. She pulled surveillance timestamps. She retrieved IP addresses. She even obtained footage of the woman who wore her face like a borrowed mask. The look-alike wasn't smug. She was nervous. That detail mattered. Nia's lawyers worked quietly. No threats. No sudden moves. Just silent containment. Accounts were flagged, not frozen. Transfers were delayed, not denied. Every action Marcus took moved him deeper into the illusion that his plan was succeeding. And Nia let her believe it. At night, Marcus grew lighter, happier. He whistled as he changed clothes. He spoke about the future in vague, careless ways. Maybe we should take more trips. Maybe it's time to simplify things. Simplify. What he meant was strip her life down to nothing and walk away rich. Nia watched him closely, studying him the way he had studied her. She noticed the subtle arrogance in his posture now, the impatience when she asked questions, the way he checked his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. He was rehearsing his freedom. She was rehearsing his fall. One evening, Marcus casually mentioned the bank. They called today, he said, pretending disinterest. Something about verifying your identity again. Probably routine. Nia didn't look up from her tablet. Oh, that's odd. Her calm unsettled him for a split second, but then he relaxed. He thought her ignorance was real. It'll all be sorted soon, he added. Nia smiled. I'm sure it will. What Marcus didn't know was that the bank wasn't verifying her identity anymore. They were documenting his fraud. The woman, the imitation, had started asking questions. Her messages to Marcus grew anxious. What she finds out? This feels risky. You promised this was safe. Marcus reassured her with practiced ease. She trusts me. She won't see it coming. Nia read every word. She learned the payment structure, the promises he'd made, the lies he'd told both women, one he was stealing from, one he was using. Marcus wasn't loyal to either. He was loyal only to his own ambition. That too would matter. Days passed, then weeks. The illusion deepened. Marcus believed the transfers were moments away. He even began planning his exit, quietly moving personal funds, researching properties abroad, speaking about new beginnings in abstract terms. Nia played her role perfectly. She scheduled dinners. She laughed at his jokes. She touched his arm when he spoke. She became, in his mind, harmless again. The powerful woman softened by love. The strategist dulled by trust. He never noticed the way she stopped sharing details about her work. He never noticed the way she memorized his routines now. Nia had always understood timing. In business, a move made too early warns the enemy. A move made too late costs everything. So she waited. She waited until Marcus was fully committed, until the forged identity was used one final time, until the authorization requests were undeniable, until intent was no longer a question, but a certainty. She waited until he crossed the line that couldn't be erased. The night before the confrontation, Marcus slept soundly beside her, his breathing steady, peaceful, satisfied. Nia lay awake. She didn't feel rage. She didn't feel heartbreak. She felt clarity. This wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about ownership of her name, her work, her legacy. Marcus hadn't just tried to steal money. He had tried to steal her existence. And for that, there would be no emotional explosion, no screaming, no dramatic scene that allowed him to twist the narrative. There would only be facts, evidence, and consequences. At dawn, Nia rose quietly and dressed with intention. A tailored suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back the way she wore it during high-stakes negotiations. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see a wife. She saw a strategist. Marcus woke as she was fastening her watch. "Big day?" he asked sleepily. Nia met his eyes. "The biggest," she said calmly. And for the first time, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. A shadow of doubt he couldn't quite name. But it was already too late. Because while Marcus believed the money was almost his, Nia had already decided how she would take everything back. Not with emotion, not with mercy, but with precision. The private banking floor was silent in the way expensive places always were. Thick carpet, muted lights, polished wood meant to absorb sound and secrets alike. When the elevator doors opened, Nia Kensington stepped out with measured confidence, her heels echoing softly down the corridor. She was right on time. Inside the glass-walled conference room, two people already waited. Marcus stood near the table, jacket perfectly pressed, posture relaxed, but his foot tapped just slightly too fast. Beside him sat the woman, the imitation. She wore a cream-colored suit almost identical to one Nia owned. Her hair was styled carefully, makeup applied to mirror Nia's understated elegance. From a distance, the resemblance was convincing. Up close, it was hollow. The moment Nia entered the room, the air shifted. The look-alike froze first. Her eyes widened, color draining from her face as if she were staring at a ghost. Her hands clenched instinctively in her lap, knuckles white. Marcus turned slowly, and in that second, before he could mask it, everything was written across his face. Shock, panic, recognition. For the first time since Nia had known him, Marcus Kensington had no script. "Nia," he said, his voice catching, "what are you doing here?" Nia didn't answer immediately. She walked to the table calmly and placed her leather folder down with deliberate care. Then she looked at the woman sitting across from her. "So," Nia said evenly, "this is what you thought I looked like when I wasn't watching." The woman swallowed hard. I didn't." "Don't." Nia cut in, her tone calm but absolute. "You don't speak unless I ask you to." Marcus stepped forward instinctively. "This isn't what it looks like." Nia finally turned to him. "Marcus," she said softly, "this is exactly what it looks like." Before he could respond, the door opened again. 2 senior bank officials entered, followed closely by a legal team. 3 attorneys in dark suits, all carrying briefcases thick with documentation. Behind them, discreet but unmistakable, were 2 uniformed police officers. Marcus's face drained of color. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "This is outrageous." One of the bank executives spoke calmly. "Mr. Kensington, please have a seat." "I don't have to." "Yes," the officer interrupted, resting a hand lightly near his belt. "You do." Marcus sat. The illusion shattered quickly after that. Screens lit up along the conference room wall. Surveillance footage rolled. Marcus entering the bank with the look-alike, guiding her, whispering instructions. Close-ups showed forged signatures being reviewed. Timestamps aligned. Video verification clips played side by side. One woman rehearsed. One woman real. Then came the digital trail, emails, messages, wire transfers, shell accounts. The payments Marcus had made to hire her. His promises. His instructions. His certainty that no one would ever question him. The look-alike began to cry quietly. "I didn't know it would go this far," she whispered. "He said they'd never check. He said it was temporary." Nia didn't look at her. She watched Marcus. He stared at the screens, mouth opening and closing, searching desperately for an angle. Any angle that might still save him. "This is a misunderstanding," he said finally, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle even to his own ears. "My wife and I were having some issues. This was role play, a test, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." One of the lawyers slid a document across the table. "Forgery, identity theft, financial fraud, conspiracy," she said coolly. "An intent to permanently transfer assets under false representation." Marcus looked at Nia, then really looked at her. "You planned this," he whispered. Nia met his gaze without flinching. "No," she corrected him. "You planned this. I simply refused to disappear quietly." The police officer stepped forward. "Mr. Kensington, please stand." Marcus shook his head, disbelief turning to desperation. "Nia, listen to me. We can fix this. You don't have to do this. Think about our life. Our marriage." Nia leaned forward slightly. "Our marriage ended the moment you decided I was easier to replace than respect." The officer placed the cuffs on Marcus's wrists. The sound was unmistakable, final. As he was led toward the door, Marcus turned back one last time, his composure finally breaking. "You've ruined me," he said hoarsely. Nia didn't raise her voice. "You ruined yourself," she replied. "I just made sure everyone saw it." Security escorted the look-alike out separately, her head bowed, the borrowed face no longer convincing now that the truth had stripped it bare. The room slowly emptied. Lawyers exchanged quiet confirmations. Bank officials offered apologies and assurances. Every account would be restored, every asset secured, every attempt documented. When Nia finally stood alone in the conference room, she let out a slow, controlled breath. The city skyline stretched beyond the windows, unchanged. But everything else had shifted. Marcus Kensington hadn't stolen quietly. He hadn't escaped. He had been exposed, publicly, legally, irreversibly. And as Nia walked back toward the elevator, posture steady, expression composed, one truth settled firmly in place. The man who tried to erase her legacy would forever be remembered as the one who destroyed his own. What could have ended Nia Kensington's life became the moment she finally claimed it. In the weeks following Marcus's arrest, the world tried to reduce the story to scandal. Headlines obsessed over betrayal, greed, and the spectacle of a powerful man falling. But Nia refused to let the narrative stay small. She had never built her legacy by surviving quietly. She built it by taking control. As investigators dug deeper into Marcus's communications, something darker surfaced. The look-alike hadn't been an isolated decision. Marcus had been connected to a broader network, consultants, fixers, and identity brokers who specialized in exploiting proximity. Spouses, family members, trusted insiders, people who knew enough to imitate, to bypass safeguards, to steal without triggering alarms until it was too late. Families like hers weren't unlucky. They were targets. Nia worked closely with federal investigators, financial regulators, and cybercrime units. She opened her records fully, shared everything: emails, contracts, behavioral patterns. What she offered wasn't just evidence. It was insight. She understood how predators thought because one had slept beside her for years. The case expanded rapidly. Arrests followed. Shell companies collapsed. Bank policies were rewritten. Institutions that once relied on surface-level verification were forced to confront how easily trust could be weaponized. The mastermind behind the operation, hidden behind layers of legality and influence, was exposed and sentenced. Marcus, stripped of every illusion he'd built, lost not only his freedom but his reputation, his access, his name. The man who believed he could erase someone else disappeared into a system he could no longer manipulate. Nia never visited him. She didn't need closure from a man who had mistaken her trust for weakness. Instead, she channeled everything: rage, clarity, resolve, into something larger than revenge. She funded new identity protection protocols for private banks. She launched a foundation focused on financial literacy and fraud prevention for high-net-worth families, particularly women whose success made them vulnerable to exploitation from within their own homes. Her pain became policy. Her betrayal became blueprint. In interviews, when asked how she endured it, Nia always answered the same way. "I didn't endure it," she said calmly. "I transformed it." She no longer introduced herself as someone who had survived crime. She was someone who had rewritten the rules because of it. The betrayal didn't break her life. It clarified it. And in doing so, Nia Kensington ensured that what was once meant to destroy her became the very thing that protected countless others. Proof that power, when reclaimed with intention, doesn't just heal. It changes the game. That phone call from the bank didn't break Nia Kensington. It revealed her. What was meant to steal her name, her future, and her sense of safety instead awakened something unshakable inside her. Where others might have crumbled under betrayal, she chose clarity over chaos, purpose over pain. Because some people, when betrayed, fall apart, and others rise with steady hands and fearless hearts, strong enough not only to protect themselves, but to make sure the same darkness can never quietly destroy another life again.